Right now, wherever you're sitting, your bedroom, your office, your living room, the walls around you are quietly influencing your hormones, your sleep, and your stress levels. Not metaphorically, literally. The height of your ceiling, the tint on your windows, the width of the hallway you walk through every single day. None of it was designed with your biology in mind. It was designed for cost, for space efficiency, for aesthetics, and your body has just been forced to adapt. Today, we're going deep into the science of how architecture shapes the way you feel, from ancient cathedrals to modern glass skyscrapers. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at your own home the same way again. Let's get into it. Let's start with something you've probably felt but never questioned. Walk into a grand hall, a museum lobby, an old cathedral, an airport terminal with soaring ceilings, and something shifts in you. You feel small, but in a good way. Calm, almost reflective. Now walk into a cramped basement office with a low drop ceiling and fluorescent lighting. Different feeling entirely. Tighter, more alert, maybe even a little tense. This isn't just in your head, it's been studied. Back in 2007, researchers Joan Myers-Levy and Rui Zhu at the University of Minnesota ran a series of experiments testing how ceiling height affected the way people processed information. What they found was fascinating. People in rooms with higher ceilings tended to think more freely. They performed better on tasks requiring abstract thinking and creative connections. People in rooms with lower ceilings, on the other hand, performed better on detail-focused, narrow tasks, but reported feeling more confined. This became known, informally, as the cathedral effect. And it's part of why so many religious and civic buildings throughout history, cathedrals, parliament buildings, grand libraries, were built with extremely high ceilings. Architects centuries ago may not have had modern psychology, but they intuitively understood that height changes how people feel inside a space. But it's not just ceilings. Corridors matter too. Long, narrow, dimly lit hallways. Think of an old hospital basement or a cramped apartment corridor, tend to trigger a subtle unease in a lot of people. Environmental psychologists connect this to how humans evolved to read space for safety. Wide open, well-lit environments, generally safety. Tight, enclosed, poorly lit spaces can subtly put your nervous system on alert, even if there's no actual threat present. This doesn't mean every narrow hallway is secretly harming you. That would be an overstatement. But it does mean the shape of the spaces you spend hours in every day is doing quiet psychological work in the background, whether you notice it or not. Now let's talk about the thing doing even more damage than shape: light. Your body runs on something called a circadian rhythm, a roughly 24-hour internal clock that regulates when you feel sleepy, when you feel alert, when your body releases hormones like cortisol and melatonin. This clock isn't set by your alarm clock or your work schedule. It's set primarily by light exposure hitting your eyes. Here's where modern architecture becomes a problem. Specialized cells in your retina, separate from the ones that let you see images, are especially sensitive to blue wavelengths of light. These cells send a direct signal to a part of your brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is essentially your body's master clock. When these cells detect bright blue-enriched light, your brain interprets that as it's daytime, and it suppresses melatonin, the hormone responsible for making you feel sleepy. This is genuinely useful during the day. Bright light in the morning helps you feel alert and helps anchor a healthy circadian rhythm. The problem is what happens at night. Modern LED lighting, the kind used in most offices, most retail spaces, and increasingly in homes, is often blue-enriched because it's cheaper and more energy efficient than warmer, more traditional lighting. Add to that the glow of phone screens, laptops, and TVs, and by the time most people are winding down for bed, their eyes are still being told it's daytime. Research on this is well established at this point. Multiple studies, including work published by researchers at Harvard Medical School, have shown that exposure to blue-enriched light in the evening delays melatonin release and can shift your entire sleep cycle later. This is part of why so many people report lying in bed feeling tired but wired after a night of scrolling on their phone. Now, here's the architectural twist. A lot of modern commercial buildings, especially ones chasing energy efficiency certifications, use glass with specific coatings designed to control heat and glare. Some of these coatings can also change the color temperature of the light that reaches you indoors, sometimes making indoor lighting feel harsher or cooler than natural daylight. Combine that with buildings that keep bright, cool-toned lighting running well into the evening, open-plan offices, 24-hour retail spaces, hospitals, and you get environments that are constantly telling your body, stay alert, even when your body actually needs to start winding down. There's also the flip side of this problem, which is just as important: not getting enough of the right light at the right time. A lot of modern buildings, parking garages, windowless offices, basement apartments, provide very little natural light exposure during the day. And ironically, that's just as disruptive as too much blue light at night, because your circadian rhythm needs a strong, clear morning light signal to stay properly calibrated. Without it, your internal clock can drift, leading to that groggy, unfocused feeling a lot of office workers describe, especially in winter months. Let's zoom out from individual buildings to entire cities. If you live in a dense urban environment, surrounded by tall buildings, there's a real phenomenon that affects how much natural light reaches you, especially in the morning. Urban planners and architects call this the urban canyon effect. Tall buildings on either side of a street essentially form a canyon, blocking low-angle morning and evening sunlight from reaching street level or lower floors. If you live on a lower floor of an apartment building in a dense city, you might not get direct sunlight until much later in the morning than someone living in a more open, low-rise area, even though technically the sun rose at the same time for both of you. Why does this matter? Because morning light is one of the strongest tools your body has for setting its clock correctly. Miss that early light exposure consistently, and your internal clock can start running later than the actual time, even if your alarm still goes off at 7 a.m. This connects to a concept researched by German chronobiologist Till Ronenberg called social jet lag. Social jet lag describes the mismatch between your body's natural internal rhythm and the schedule society forces you to keep: work start times, school schedules, and so on. Ronenberg's research, based on large population studies, found that a significant portion of people experience a chronic mismatch between their biological clock and their social schedule, essentially living in a permanent, mild state of jet lag without ever getting on a plane. Urban design can make this worse. If your building blocks morning light, and your commute is through more shaded, high-rise corridors, and your workplace also has limited natural light, you're stacking multiple small circadian disruptions on top of each other throughout the day. No single one of these is catastrophic on its own. But added together, day after day, year after year, it can meaningfully affect sleep quality, mood, and energy levels for a lot of people living and working in dense urban centers. It's worth being really clear here. This isn't some intentional conspiracy by architects to harm you. It's an unintended side effect of building cities to maximize density and land value, without historically factoring in circadian science. Because, frankly, most of this research on light and internal clocks has only become well understood in the last few decades, long after most major cities were already built. Let's talk about one very specific, very modern architectural trend that ties a lot of this together: the open-plan office. Starting in the 2000s and 2010s, companies across the world tore down cubicle walls in favor of big, open-plan offices, the reasoning being that open space would increase collaboration and communication between employees. It looked great in design magazines. But multiple studies since then have found the reality was more complicated. Research published in the Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society, based on studies at Harvard, found that when companies switched to open-plan offices, face-to-face interaction between employees actually decreased, not increased. People responded to the lack of privacy by putting in headphones and communicating over email and chat instead, essentially building digital walls to replace the physical ones that were removed. There's also a well-documented stress component. Open-plan offices tend to have less control over noise, lighting, and personal space, and environmental psychology research consistently shows that a perceived lack of control over your environment is one of the more reliable predictors of chronic low-level stress. It's not the open layout itself that's necessarily the problem. It's the loss of personal control that often comes with it. This connects back to everything we've covered. An open-plan office often means shared, uniform lighting that doesn't account for individual circadian needs, less acoustic privacy, and often, ironically, desks positioned far from actual windows, since window-adjacent space is often reserved for meeting rooms or executive offices. So the space designed to bring people together and open things up can end up being one of the more circadian unfriendly environments people spend 8+ hours a day in. Okay, you didn't come here just to feel worse about your apartment. Let's talk about what you can actually do, starting today. Critical. 1. Prioritize morning light. Genuinely, not just as a wellness cliché. Getting outside, or at least near a bright window, within the first hour of waking up is one of the most well-supported ways to anchor your circadian rhythm. Even 10 to 15 minutes of natural light exposure in the morning can make a measurable difference in how alert you feel during the day and how easily you fall asleep at night. 2. Control your evening light environment. Switch to warmer, dimmer lighting in the 2 to 3 hours before bed. Many phones and laptops now have built-in night mode or warm light settings. Use them. It's a small habit, but it directly counters the blue light signal that delays melatonin. 3. Create a physically distinct wind-down space. If possible, avoid working, scrolling, or watching high-stimulation content in the same space where you sleep. Even a small physical separation, a different chair, a different corner of the room, helps your brain build an association between that space and rest. 4. Rethink your workspace layout, even in small ways. If you work from home or have flexibility in an office, try to position your desk near a window, and where possible, avoid working directly under harsh overhead lighting for extended periods. If you're stuck with a low ceiling or cramped space, even small changes, better lighting, decluttering, adding a mirror to create a sense of openness can meaningfully change how the space feels. 5. If you live somewhere with limited natural light, consider a light therapy device. This isn't a gimmick. Bright light therapy boxes, originally developed for treating seasonal affective disorder, are backed by a solid body of clinical research and are commonly recommended by sleep specialists for people who don't get enough natural morning light, whether because of geography, work schedule, or building design. 6. Advocate for better design where you have influence. If you're ever in a position to choose or influence a workspace, home layout, or renovation, circadian conscious design is a growing field, sometimes called human-centric lighting or referenced in standards like the WELL Building Standard. It's a real, research-backed area, not just marketing. None of these fixes require moving to a new city or tearing down walls. They're small, deliberate adjustments, but stacked together, they can meaningfully counteract the unintentional biological cost of modern architecture. So the next time you feel inexplicably tired at 3 p.m., or you can't figure out why you're wide awake at midnight, it might not just be about your habits. It might be about the walls around you. Architecture shapes biology more than most of us ever stop to consider, and once you start noticing it, you can't really unsee it. If this video changed the way you look at your own space, hit subscribe. I'm going deeper into the hidden science of everyday environments every week. And let me know in the comments, what's one thing about your home or office that you're going to change after watching this? I'll be reading through them. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.